Hola todos! I make videos on all the different parts of Spanish GCSE, and I have done for 3 years now. But in this video, let's talk about how to revise for the subject as a whole, and what you can be doing in the weeks and months leading up to your mock exams and your real exams to become more confident and end up with a higher grade in Spanish. So let's start small with what you can be doing a little bit every day. And of course, that's vocabulary. Exam boards have a set list of vocab at GCSE. The more of those words you learn, the better you will be able to perform in the reading and the listening exams, and it will also help you in writing and the speaking papers. There's lots of ways to learn new words. Whatever works for you is fine, but if you haven't yet started actively trying to learn new words, can I recommend digital flashcard apps like Quizlet or Gizmo or Anki? Anki is the one I personally recommend, and if you're hesitant to use it because it looks a bit sort of complicated to use, don't be, because I promise it's worth learning how to use it, and it's not too difficult. It's worth really learning how to make the most of it. I have an instructional video for Anki that goes through exactly how to set it up for the purpose of learning vocabulary, and I'll link it in the description down below. Little and often is what you should be doing, so 10 or 15 minutes a day, every single day. Please try not to miss a day, it will have an impact. Let's do a quick vocab test now and see how many of these words you know. Let's go for 3 words. So let's pick a nice and easy one to start off with. Reciclar, the AR verb, reciclar. It is a cognate, so it looks very similar in English. It hopefully should be quite easy to guess. Reciclar is to recycle. Let's do another one. Let's pick a noun this time, if I can find one. Um, let's do la tienda. La tienda. Hopefully, it's a word that some of you have heard of. What do we think it means? The shop. Muy bien. Tienda is shop. It looks nothing like the English word, but it means the shop. And lastly, let's do el comportamiento. That's a good one. El comportamiento. It looks like the word compartment, maybe, but it means something very different. It means behavior. If you got all 3, then that's obviously very good, but make sure you're spending time learning new words. There's lots of words for you to learn, and it will help you massively when it comes to exam season. Maybe a more fun way of picking up vocabulary, apart from things like Anki and really grinding out the words, is by watching videos in Spanish and listening to podcasts. For GCSE, I don't personally think listening to music is the most effective way compared to things like podcasts and videos, because songs will be quite often use Spanish from Latin America and maybe use lots of slang and not pronounce the words properly, so it's not as effective. But there's a channel on YouTube by the name of Dreaming Spanish, and I always go on about them because their videos are really good for GCSE level. They've got playlists of varying difficulties, and generally their videos are on quite fun topics, so they should be quite easy to watch. Grammar is also just as important. It should be pretty quick to learn, so please don't overcomplicate it. But there's a certain number of tenses that you need to know, and for the most part, Spanish grammar is very similar to English grammar. If we take the sentence, I prefer to watch movies at the cinema because the atmosphere is better. I prefer to watch movies at the cinema because the atmosphere is better. You could translate that mostly word for word. So I prefer is going to be your verb in that sentence. I could say prefiero to say I prefer. If you're confident with the present tense, then you should already know how to use verbs like prefiero, how to conjugate that IR verb, preferir, to become prefiero. To watch movies is ver las películas, so prefiero ver las películas in the cinema, en el cine, literally in the cinema. And because is the word porque, the atmosphere is better. You could say porque el ambiente es mejor. So prefiero ver las películas en el cine porque el ambiente es mejor. That's going to be your final sentence. Hopefully you can see Spanish sentences, putting them together isn't always the hard part. The hard part is learning the vocabulary and learning how to conjugate verbs in the first place. There's various grammar videos on this channel, so find the Spanish grammar playlist and start learning from there. If you want to practice verb conjugation, you use the website livelingua.com and you can pick the tense you want to practice. Just make sure you click on include vosotros because the GCSE is based on Spanish from Spain, not Latin America. If you don't understand a particular grammar rule or a particular grammar point, just Google it. There's nothing stopping you, obviously, from learning things yourself and teaching things to yourself. You don't need to wait for your school or your teacher to cover it with you in class. Once you've got the vocab and grammar down, you can then go on to start doing exam practice using past papers. If you don't know where to start, I would say reading is the easiest paper or the easiest out of the 4 skills. So grab yourself a reading paper, have a go at it in time conditions, and then mark it afterwards and make sure you learn from it. For all of your subjects, but for Spanish, I recommend you keep a place where you can write down everything you learn, all the mistakes you make from your past papers, whether that's past papers in exams and mock exams or past papers you do yourself. So at the end, you've got a nice long list of tips and tricks for yourself and mistakes that you are regularly going to make, whether it's to do with exam technique or new vocabulary. Exam boards love to reuse the same types of questions and the same vocabulary every single year. So, a word you might see in your November mocks might come up again in the summer exams. I'm going to quickly rattle off some tips for each paper, but I do have lots of specific videos for each of the 4 exam skills on this channel. For listening, before the audio starts, read through the questions so you know what you're listening out for, and you can use those 5 minutes of preparation time that you get at the start very wisely. And then you get 2 minutes at the end to finish writing or fill in any gaps from earlier. Listen for keywords and negatives like nunca, nadie, sin, no, jamás. These are all words that will sort of flip the meaning of the sentence. Practice listening more subconsciously by listening to podcasts, like I mentioned earlier, and things that aren't just specific exam practice. The dictation question is probably should be quite easy. It involves you writing down exactly what you hear them saying. They will repeat each sentence 3 times, and you get marks for correct spelling. So just be really careful that you spell the words correctly. For reading then, if you're running out of time, you might choose to skim read through the text, especially if it's particularly long, quickly to get the overall gist, and then you can sort of read back a second time for detail. Use context and cognates and keywords to help you when you're faced with a particularly challenging text. And again, practice lots because exam boards will use same sort of tricks repeatedly to catch you out. This seems silly, but read the question carefully. It's so easy to make a silly mistake or write down the wrong bit of information, and that can be the difference between obviously a grade 6 or a grade 7 or an 8 or 9 or whatever. Also, again, look out for the negative words. They can flip the meaning of a sentence. You might want to have a look at if a text, the overall sense of it is if it's positive or negative, and that might help you guess some of those multiple choice questions. For writing, plan your answers, even if you think it's unnecessary. Some quick notes of what you want to say for each bullet point is going to help you later on. And also write down some key writing phrases you want to use, maybe in the form of an acronym, like the acronym DISPATCH, which stands for De hecho, en otras palabras, ese siempre me ha gustado. P is para decir la verdad. A is a mi modo de ver. T is tengo la intención de. Then C is cuando sea mayor. And lastly, H is he decidido. That's the example I've got in my grade 9 phrases list on my website, gcspanish.com. Get yourself an acronym. You can make up your own one and write that on your writing paper at the start in the sort of question area as part of your plan. And you can use the same set of phrases for the 90-word question and the 150-word question because they are marked separately. So you can repeat the phrases across both questions. After you've written your answer, make sure you've got some time there to proofread, check your verb endings, agreements, spelling. Genuinely, even smart students will make the silliest of mistakes, and if it's a small mistake, you might not lose a mark, but try to be as accurate as you can if you know the grammar correctly anyway. Accent marks don't matter a lot unless it changes the meaning of the word. For example, hablo versus hablo, I speak versus he or she speaks. Okay, so lastly, for speaking, you've got to use your 15 minutes of preparation time wisely. I've got lots of videos where I go through how to use that time, particularly for AQA and for EdXL. Most of the speaking exam will be you reading through the answers that you've written beforehand, with a bit of improvisation here and there. So do practice spontaneity. If you're saying answers that you've memorized beforehand, for the conversation part of the exam in particular, learn to speak slowly and sound more natural. You might want to record yourself speaking and listen back and identify some of the pauses that you make and the hesitations and work on them, even though you don't need to sound like a super fast native speaker to get full marks. Nothing beats practicing actual exam questions, so do that as early as possible and start working your way through lots of past papers. Even the past papers for other exam boards like AQA and EdXL have a lot of similarities. Especially for AQA students, there's lots of exam technique you need to master for speaking and writing. So go back, go through past papers, look at the mark schemes. I've got walkthrough videos for various of the papers on my channel if you can't be bothered to read through the mark schemes yourself. Okay, a couple more things. You might choose to change your foreign language to Spanish. I know people who do this. I don't think it makes obviously a massive difference, but if it's something you want to do, then feel free to do that, and you might learn some new words, and you might sort of strengthen your knowledge of the words you already know. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you do and how helpful you find it. What definitely is a good idea though is talking to yourself and others in Spanish, just casually. It doesn't have to resemble the exam at all, but you will feel way more confident when it comes to improvising in the speaking exam. You'll trust yourself more, and a large part of your success in any speaking exam, I think, comes down to confidence. The last thing I'm going to add then is managing your revision of Spanish compared to all of your other subjects, because you guys do 9 or 10 or 11 subjects, and Spanish for the vast majority of you is going to be much lower down on your priority list, and that's okay, I get that. But I want all of you to put in a small amount of effort or small amount of work every day for Spanish, so in the long run, you never have to cram before the exam. and you'll end up with a decent grade, even if it's not a grade 9. On results day, all of your subjects will be listed in alphabetical order. On the results sheet, Spanish will be on there, and you don't want that grade to drag down everything else. I'm not going to keep you any longer, so well done for watching all the way through. If you did, subscribe to this channel for more videos, and that's it for me. I'm here to help you guys, so please let me know in the comments what you're struggling with. Okay, adios.